What did you think you were going to be when you were growing up?
Well, that was sort of easy. I mean, I found bike racing when I was 9 years old. I was very fortunate to grow up in a place like Colorado. So I knew from a pretty early age. In 1983, Greg LeMond won the world championship. And I would say that was for many U.S. cyclists, that was a pretty pivotal moment to wanting to potentially be a cyclist. And so I always tell the story. When I was 12, I was riding up this mountain called Lookout Mountain, which is near Golden, Colorado. It was the middle of the night. It was 2 a.m. in the morning, no lights, no helmet. My mom was a single mom, and so she was often working. And in the summers, I mean, we were my brother and I were pretty out of control, maybe is the right way to put it, doing whatever we wanted to. And so I would ride, sometimes I would just wake up and I would go ride in the middle of the night. And one time I was riding up Lookout Mountain at 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm 12 years old. And I get pulled over by a couple of police officers, and they look at me and they're like, "Kid, what are you doing out here? Like, I mean, it's the middle of the night out here." And I just looked these two police officers dead in the eye, and I'm like, "I'm training for the Tour de France." And they just let me go. They were just like, "Oh, okay, go ahead." You know, any normal situation, you get, child services called on you, like the parents do, but they just let me go.
You must have had some sort of confidence in your eyes. They're like,
well, I mean,
this kid's got
I
it.
was legitimately training, so I was, it wasn't like I was lying. But that was, so I would say very, very early on, I knew that I wanted to be a professional cyclist. And, I mean, I had a nice short career in Europe. It was very, very hard racing in Europe. And I would kind of say other than the fact that I went through the back windshield of a team car at 40 miles an hour, no helmet, had 155 stitches in my face. I would say that I kind of knew I was a good cyclist. I would say that it was pretty early on that I knew that I wasn't going to make it to the Tour or something. And so it was a hard decision to quit, but it was the right decision at that time, and especially what was going on in the sport at that time.
How long did it take you to become professional, from biking up Lookout Mountain on your own to being pro?
I turned professional when I was very young. I signed with a Swiss team when I was 18, and I was there till 22, and then I was done. So I was in early and I was out early.
What do you think? Not many people could actually become professional, right? Like have that dream when you're young and then actually make it happen. What do you think separated you from the other people who didn't make it?
I think going to Europe at a young age was a very big deal for me, and being on a B-level team and getting the chance to race the way that I did, I sort of, I guess I'd say, nudged my way in by going to Europe. And I think at the time there was a fair amount of optimism around not just Americans, but there were Japanese riders on our team. There were, South Africans on our team. So there was a lot of enthusiasm about, essentially foreigners coming to Europe to race. Again, I feel very fortunate that for me, it was a very collegial sort of feeling there. So I didn't go to college right away. I went to college after I was done racing, but it was definitely like living in a house with people from all over the world and, speaking foreign languages and everything. For me was a very, it was just a great experience, and again, some people might, and I might say occasionally cut short, but like for me, it was the right amount of time for the level that I was. And, like I said, I was a very good, I sort of joke, I was good at carrying bottles and chasing breakaways, but I kind of knew that I was never going to be at the level that I needed to be, a top level rider.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
Yeah.
What percentage of that do you remember being fun versus just sucking, like in pain?
Yeah. Bike racing's hard. I mean, it's not a sport for everybody. I like suffering. I mean, I sort of thematically, I would say in my life, there's a certain element of wanting to suffer, like almost in everything that to me I find enjoyable. So I think about the process of whether it's becoming a professional athlete or building a business. There's a lot of time that some people would say really sucks, like it's really hard. But for me, that part of the journey is almost more rewarding, like the really hard parts, the grinding parts, than the successful moments. I mean, if there's anything I'd say I'm really bad at in business, and certainly felt this way when I was racing too, it's like celebrating success, not easy for me. I don't do that well. I wish I did it better. I wish I could, rally around the moments where you do have a lot of success and really celebrate that. And that's always been a challenge for me.
How do you train your mind to enjoy that suffering? I can relate to that. I love doing it, right? Like the training Muay Thai in Thailand. It's like, how deep can we go into this, But for people who maybe can't relate to that, like, how does that even start?
I think you have to look at it not like it's suffering, not like it's hard. So, again, I look at a lot of these moments like it's the process. Like it's the process of, like, in some ways, the suffering almost makes you better. And so I always, even when I'm talking to other entrepreneurs, like, I'm always talking about that the moments that you're probably suffering the most are the moments that are actually going to create the most opportunity, right? So, I think, again, suffering is probably not the right terminology when you're talking about building a business, but I think it's like the journey matters. It really, really matters, and those are the moments you almost want to lean into.
Mm-hmm. And when you say it creates opportunities, like what kind of opportunities?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if there's hard moments where, whether it's, team and you're having to make really hard decisions, I think, sometimes that creates opportunities for other people to step up or you to hire other people that might have an impact on the business in a different way. I think if it relates to, like, partnerships, you could be out there, like, trying to build a partnership for years and then all of a sudden it comes through, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't keep putting the energy into it. Or, if you're raising capital and you kind of go through the moments of no. I mean, I was just joking with someone this morning on a call, like, the number of people that have had said no to me when raising capital is definitely in the hundreds, right? Like, and those moments are hard, but I think they're also the moments where you realize that without that sort of challenge, maybe the success, wouldn't be there, or you wouldn't have gotten to the level that you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think an interesting thing, especially from your entrepreneurial journey, you've probably gotten pretty good at deciding when to continue with something and when to quit something, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
as good as you can be at it.
I think it's really hard to say no. I mean, I think that the biggest challenge in building any business is that I think it's very easy to say yes to things and very hard to say no. And I do think, my staff might say otherwise, the team might say otherwise, but I would say that I think I've gotten better at saying no to things the longer that the more I've been involved in different businesses. It's still not easy. I still want to say yes to a lot of things.
Well, that's actually what you're known for. I talked to a lot of people who know you and worked for you before this. And I'd ask, what do you love about working for Robin?
Yeah.
And they'd say his ability to say yes, to try things. And that struck a chord with me because I've come from jobs where everything was no, right? Really big corporations. Everything starts at no. That's exhausting, man.
Yeah. Well, there's a great Harvard study that talks about employee engagement, and the number one thing cited, is that people have to feel like they're making progress, that they have to feel like the effort that they're putting in is going towards something, whether it's a greater good, whether it's a specific project. And so I guess I would just say I'm a very big believer that one of the reasons you have to say yes to things is you have to let people go through their own process at some level, right? Sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Do you have other leadership philosophies that you hold, like, really close to your heart?
Yeah, I mean, I think that transparency with your team is really important. And so I would say that I've always tried to, and I would suggest that I ask the team to do this too, I've always tried to give more information more freely out to the team than maybe some other people that I know, some other leaders or entrepreneurs that I know. Even if sometimes that's not, like, well, one is, I would say, sometimes not often good for you, because the perception of giving information sometimes could be that those teams think that you're not allocating resources correctly, or maybe your strategy isn't aligned with them, which at some level means that at times you can lose people because they maybe aren't aligned with you, at that moment. But on the flip side, I feel like you kind of want to get, whether it's good news or bad news, you kind of want to get it out there as quickly as possible and let people digest it in their own way, like kind of process it and move through that. There's a great Steve Jobs quote about like, if you hire the best people, you really have to get out of their way. You really have to allow them to kind of operate. And so I would say that I tend to give a lot of latitude, and I would say the only exception to that is like when performance isn't good, and then sometimes I'll get more involved. And some people like that, some people don't, because they at that time they might need the help, and other people might be like, oh, look, he's interfering with like what we're trying to do. But I would generally say from a philosophical perspective, I think trying to hire the best people and put them in the right positions, and then kind of letting them go for it until and if they trip up, how do you help them? How do you help them get into a better position? I think there's things that I've been better and worse at over time. Like I would say early in my career, like when I started MapMyFitness, I would generally say I was too hard on people, just in general. Like I was impatient and I was hard on people. I've gotten, I would argue, a lot more patient the longer that I've kind of gone through this, as well as like a little bit more, hopefully, constructive in the way that I give feedback to people and see how they kind of come through that. But I remember being, I was definitely very aggressive is probably the wrong word, but like I was just impatient.
Where did that come from?
Oh, I think it was my whole life. I think I was an impatient cyclist. I would say that I've never been good at living in the now and always like building towards the future. And I would say that's maybe what I've improved as I've gotten older, is a little bit more being very present.
It's a powerful thing.
Yeah, but at the time, like when I started MapMy, I would say I was always living in the future a lot. Because it was always about what we were releasing next, or what the next big milestone were, or the fundraising or the revenue or whatever it was, so.
It's the chase.
It's the chase.
We love it, right?
We love the chase.
But there's no magical day that you're going to wake up after selling your company for $200 million, flip the switch and be like, oh shit, I finally made it.
No, it's funny. I was just talking to my wife about this weekend. Like, she doesn't think I'll ever stop working. She's like, why? What? What? But it's to me, it's the journey. It's not really about the finish line. It doesn't matter what the next big hurdle is. It's really, it's fun. The journey's fun.
Well, and what better place to learn that lesson than the outdoors?
For sure. You got risk. I don't, there's obviously I think we're trying to change the image that the outdoors is just climbing Everest, that type of outdoors. I think we're trying to change it to even a walk in a park is beneficial to your health and wellness. But, I generally would say that the outdoors has a certain amount of element of risk to it, and the journey around it, and like how to progress, right? Like you can't, if you've never snowboarded, you can't just jump on a hill and snowboard. Like you're going to fall on your butt a few times, you're going to fall on your knees a few times, you're going to be sore,
Sit there and spin out.
100%, exactly. Yeah.
I want to go back to your ability to quit professional cycling, what you dreamed of doing your whole life, right? I'm sure you were so in it. You moved across the world for it, very young age. It's super impressive, Robin. And so you quit that, and then what was your plan?
Well, I kind of going back to the theme of I was impatient. I came back, I went to school for finance, and I finished undergrad in just a little bit over 3 years because I was impatient. It wasn't like, I was like, I'm now behind all my peers. Right? Like if you think about it, like I'm the 22-year-old in college versus being the 18-year-old, and I got to catch up as fast as I can. And then, many students might take a break between undergrad and grad school. I was like, no, I just got to go straight in. And so I did grad school while I was working at night for 2 years and finished grad school in 2 years. And, for me, it was like really getting on a new path. And I probably had a few moments where I thought I might go back to cycling, even if it was domestically versus, in Europe. But I quickly realized that I had built up a really good base of knowledge in the finance area, and I obviously was getting good jobs. And so it was sort of like, okay, I guess I'm on to the next career. I'm on to the next thing, And So, and I was in finance for 14 years. I mean, it was a long time before I founded my first company. But I also think that was a realization when I did found my first company. I think it was a bit of a realization like, can I really wait any longer to jump out and be an entrepreneur? Or am I going to get stuck in being sort of like the finance guy, you know? So that, I think it was kind of at that moment where I was like, no, I gotta get moving if I'm gonna.
What was that defining moment? It was like 2008, 2009.
No, it was actually 2005. So I was on a cycling trip in Europe, and a bunch of Americans, and it was just a vacation. Like I'd go on every couple of years, met up with a bunch of people in Switzerland that I knew, and a bunch of people in the States that had come with me. And one night at dinner, somebody just goes, "Hey, it'd be really cool if I could know the roads you know in Switzerland from having lived here and come back on my own." And that was sort of the trigger for MapMyFitness. It was like, oh, I wonder if there's a way for me to build and share routes with you so that you could use those at a later date. And, you know, at first I thought it was very much going to be a, I don't know, like a hobby project. Like, oh, I'll just build this website and kind of see what happens. And,
wait, that's wicked cool.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was just up giving this this talk in Canmore this last week and giving the history of sort of geospatial and GPS devices in the outdoor industry. And people just don't realize, like, one, how democratizing something like mobile was for access to something like GPS, right? Like, you didn't need to spend $500 on a Garmin device. You got it for free on your phone. You could just download an app and had all the connectivity and, you know, the other things with it, music, etc. And so when we launched we had a couple of the first 100 iPhone apps. When we launched Map My Run and Map My Ride in 2008, that's sort of that's when the company really started going, was like, you know, basically in the midst of the world collapsing, like in the fall of 2008 when Lehman was melting down and, you know, the world, that's when MapMy really started to take off, because we were featured by Apple as one of the, you know, the home screen ads on their exclusive advertising. Map My Ride was, and it just exploded. Like, I mean, we had so many downloads and so much connectivity in it. And I think that was that moment where, one, it was a realization the company was no longer just going to be like a hobby, and it was secondarily, it was like, if I'm going to jump and go do this, like build companies, like this is probably as good of a situation as I possibly could get. You know. Was
there a moment you got like a kick in the butt that's like, okay, I have to leave Wellington now to go run this full time?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was, when we got featured by Apple, it was a pretty big realization to me that like, this is not small enough for me to, quote, do as a hobby project, right? So regardless of how bad the world condition was, it was sort of a realization like it was now or never.
You had to, right? There's no, like, not even a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, and we didn't raise money for another, what was it? That was like, it was December of 2008. We didn't raise money until the summer of 2010, like venture capital. So it was a little bit, like, it was a leap of faith, because basically at that time it was all my money, basically, and a few other friends, right? So it was a pretty big leap of faith on my part that, like, it was going to work out, and it did. So
was Wellington cool with you growing this on the side?
Well, that's a little bit of a different story, but I would say when it really got going, I just left. You know, I was like, okay, this is now, like, it's big enough that I have to go and do this. Right?
Okay.
So I would say my decision to leave was specifically triggered to the fact that, like, I knew it wasn't a hobby. And at that point, I had to make the decision and say, like, this is a real job. I got to go do this.
How much money did you end up raising for MapMyFitness?
We raised about $25 million. By the time we'd sold it to Under Armour, the business was doing a little bit over $25 million in revenue, and we had about 25 million users when we sold the business to Under Armour. So it was sort of like all the metrics in a line, and that was also a time like when companies were paying multiples on users, not revenue, not EBITDA, like users, you know. So, and we had a lot of users. I mean, 25 million users aggregated an app is a lot of, like, at that time, it was a lot of people. In 2013, when they bought the company, you know, it's 65 million users now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you share what you sold it for?
I mean, it's public. I mean, we sold it for 150 million.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It was a very big deal. And I stayed, I felt very loyal to, and I still feel loyal to Kevin Plank for the fact that he decided to lean in and take that risk on the business.
Can you share who Kevin is?
Kevin Plank's the founder and CEO of Under Armour. So I learned a ton from Kevin. I was there for 3 years, which is longer than most founders stick around.
Is there a chief digital officer?
Yeah. And so it was a ton of fun. I mean, in some ways, like I relate a little bit at that time, like, I was at, I don't know, 3 Super Bowls, national championships, like, you name it, we had access to it. So it was a really fun time for me too, just to kind of explore the world of sports.
Yeah.
Like I remember one time we were in Mexico City and we got to play on the pitch, like full soccer outfits, everything down there on the field. And again, that was all because it was Under Armour, right? There's no other way that and no other way anyone gets to play on that field.
You can't pay for that.
No, exactly.
So most of us will never experience what it's like to sell a company for $150 million. What's it like?
What's it like? It's probably, well, I mean, I have to put it in the before. So leading up to the sale, I would say is both sort of an incredible experience because at some level you have been validated. Like, in other words, like you're building this thing, you're working on it every day for a decade, and then someone comes along and is like, yeah, okay, I'm going to buy it from you for a really big price. And so I think there's a bit of validation that comes with that. I would just tell you that for me and the situation that I grew up, it was incredibly nerve-wracking. And what I mean by that is, like, I remember that we made the public announcement on November 14th, 2013, and then the deal actually closed on December 6th or something like that. I remember almost every night in those 3 weeks, like, literally throwing up. Like, I was so nervous that, like, something was going to come unraveled, it wasn't going to happen. It was just a very, very, very nervous time for me, and it all worked out. Like, the after was that being chief digital officer at Under Armour was amazing. The team was incredible. We built a really big team around e-com and connected fitness and launched some hardware and did a bunch of different things. But I would say that sort of leading up to and when the deal happened was incredibly stressful, because I think you have, entrepreneurs, like, whether you want to admit or not, you have doubts at times. Like, is it really worth this? Is this something somebody would pay for it? Is my idea really that good? And when you put that much energy into something, it's pretty, it can shake you if it doesn't happen or something like that. And I was also really worried about the team. And what I mean by that is, like, we had a lot of, like, I think at the time we had given a lot of equity to the team. I think the team owned over 20% of the company. So I think there were 13 or 14 millionaires that were printed out of the deal. And, I was nervous for them too. I was nervous, like, what if I screw something up and they don't have that outcome?
How old were you?
I would have been 42. Yeah, it was 10 years ago. I don't know if it matters I don't know if it would have mattered much if I was 32 or 42, but it was, there were definitely very stressful moments leading up to the deal actually closing.
Throwing up for 3 weeks straight is
it wasn't pretty. My wife definitely remembers it. She was like,
wait, what a trooper she is.
Oh yeah, she is. Yeah, she is.
We need to have her here too. I'm sure she could share good sides of this story.
She's got lots of good stories for sure. Yeah, she's been my rock for sure. I mean, she.
What's her name?
Sarah. We had 3 kids in the midst of all this. They're 7, 10, and 12 now, and she's just an amazing human being. She's always been sort of steadfast there, and just, like, been a great listener and dealt with a lot of, like, the travel and the anxiety of building businesses, because now she's been through 3. So yeah, no, I could not do it without her for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations on finding your life partner.
Oh yeah, she's awesome.
So how did that experience, the starting MapMyFitness to selling it, how did that ultimately change your life?
I mean, I would just say, like, there are definitely things that changed. Like, I wouldn't say that we were aggressive in spending or anything like that, but there's different things to think about.
Did you go, like, buy a house, or you?
Well, yeah, we bought a house and car and stuff like that, but we tried to be somewhat conservative, knowing that like, there a lot of, like, people do burn through a lot of money when they do these things if they don't think about it in the right way. So we did a lot of estate planning and things like that. But
nice.
I would just say that we took nice vacation, But I would say we settled back into like what I'd call sort of normal cadence pretty quickly. Like after we took that, we went to Hawaii, and the kids, 2 of our kids were very, very young. Max, he was just, I think, 6 or 9 months old when we went to Hawaii. And now he's 10, you know, and it's like, but I would say that outside of like a few of those things, I just would say we didn't go crazy. We just, we kind of were like, hey, you know, like we're still young. This has to last a long time. We have to do the right things with it. And so I would say we were somewhat conservative. Yeah.
And then I bet you were blessed with this like freedom and this empowerment to go set up your next thing. Obviously, you said you went to Under Armour for 3 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was actually, when I went to Under Armour, and I would say a couple years in, I was pretty convinced I might be there for a decade. I mean, I really liked it. Part of the story about Outside is that, you know, I went to Kevin and I was like, I think we should create like a Red Bull media house. Like, I think we could have a similar type impact. But we had already spent a lot of money on the assets that we had acquired, and so there just wasn't more capital to put into building content. So it was a kind of a natural, I guess I would say a natural point for me to leave. And, you know, and then I had a non-compete, so I got recruited to run a consumer genetics company, which is like a whole nother story. It really wasn't in my, I remember having an interview with the founder of Illumina, because Illumina was like the parent company that was like half owner of Helix, and Jay Flatley, he's kind of known as the godfather of genetics. And I remember him asking me, like, what's your experience in like biology or molecular biology or anything? And I looked at him and I was like, I think I got like a C in high school in biology. You know, that was like the only real like science background that I had. And so, but they wanted a consumer person. They wanted someone to build the consumer side of it, and so it was a pretty natural fit. But that transition was like going to healthcare and sort of like deep health tech was it was a huge learning curve for me. I mean, dealing with the FDA, and you know, I mean, we had, I don't know, 40 PhDs in molecular biology on staff, and you know, so like, you know, I just had to learn a lot very, very quickly, and, you know, really appreciated the work that the staff did to help me get up to speed and things like that. But that was a pretty big, you know, like I was talking to I was doing this thing for CNBC not that long ago, and with a bunch of young entrepreneurs. And I don't know, somebody was asking about like, what are the limits? And I was like, look, if a kid like me can end up as a CEO of a molecular biology company, like anyone can do anything. Like I was like, there's no rhyme or rhythm to this necessarily. And so like I always say, just like go for it. Like you don't know. I mean, who knows what job you're going to land in? Who knows what position you can land in if you just go for it? And that was definitely the case with Helix for sure. Yeah.
That's beautifully said, Robin.
Yeah. I mean, it was. Again, I think I had a lot of anxiety at Helix because I was like, at some level, it was the only time in my life I can remember having some sort of like doubts about my knowledge base. You know, just because, I mean, I would get myself in like, I really studied, but I would still like, it quickly could go over my head. Like when we were in meetings and talking about things and with partners, and, you know, it was definitely a moment where a learning experience for me that you want to push yourself and your limits a lot, but at times the knowledge is super, super critical, and kind of what you're, you know, what you've been, you know, not programmed for, but like how you've been developed over a long period of time actually does matter for your ability to like, you know, talk to things and be knowledgeable about them. So it was a challenge for me there and I was there almost 3 years. But you know, it was definitely a massive learning experience for sure. And I know I'll never go back to healthcare. Like that's for sure. I know that 100%. Yeah.
I'm still intrigued. I just did 5-year stint in healthcare with AI for cancer detection.
Yeah.
It's fun. You know, you can reach a lot of people in a pretty impactful way, but it is pretty deep. So you mentioned anxiety there. And I think a lot of the listeners of this podcast, Permission to Shine, are people who just are pushing hard in life, right? And trying to accomplish a lot. And because of that, anxiety comes and stress comes. How did you cope with a lot of that?
It might be because, so like I moved 16 times before I was 16. My mom was a single mom. She moved a lot, all in the Denver sort of public Denver area, and I went to I think 9 different Denver public schools.
Whoa.
And then I would argue that like bike racing, you create a lot of resiliency, and like stress is there all the time. And so I would just say mostly my ability to deal with anxiety or stress comes from sort of like being raised in a situation and being in situations that there was like a lot of movement and change, and I don't get me wrong, I mean, I think I certainly have moments of stress and anxiety like anyone, but I do think it's how you adapt to those moments that sort of allow you to thrive or fold.
So then talk to me about the hypothesis for how Outside came together.
Yeah. So I think there was obviously a bunch of pieces I would argue were sort of like unfinished business from Under Armour, like just things that I felt like from a consumer perspective, like the friction a consumer goes through, like hadn't really been answered. Like we didn't get far enough into building, whether it was Under Armour Record or the hardware or the ecosystem, we didn't get far enough into it that we answered all those questions. And so I think the thesis from my perspective was like the consumer still has a tremendous amount of friction, whether that's in registering for an event, whether that's getting access to the things that they need to get better at the activities that they're doing, whether that's, how you plan a trip, whether that's how you buy gear. Like I still feel like there's a ton of friction. And so as I kind of looked out in the ecosystem, and again, going back to the content comment, I felt like there was a lot of fragmentation in content that just like, if you were a mountain biker, you might use Pink Bike, or if you went from mountain biking to skiing, Ski Mag and Pink Bike weren't connected at all. So there was no way to sort of link up that journey. Or let's say that you're an expert road cyclist, and so you're on Velo because you're like, hey, this is the content that I read about. But let's say you're just getting into kayaking, like there wasn't a great way to connect those dots for people, right? Like how to sort of at different parts of the journey if you're doing multi-activity things. And so I just felt like there was this big opportunity, one, to consolidate a lot of the pieces around the content side of the world that were highly fragmented and frankly started by enthusiasts. Like most of them were started by enthusiasts who just wanted to get in the category, and they didn't have any tech investment. The sales function was maybe not as developed as it could be from an advertising. They didn't have a membership layer for digital. So I felt like there was a big opportunity on the content side. But I think for me, it was more like, how do you bring the other pieces? How do you activate people? So how do you take them from, I'm more interested, look, I love Warren Miller. It's a big product that we have. This year is the 75th year. But I'm more interested in, did those people go skiing after watching Warren Miller over the course of the next 6 to 8 months than I am necessarily that they just saw the movie. I want them to see the movie, but I want it to be a catalyst for driving them into skiing.
Conversion.
Right? Yeah. Well, activation. Like you want it to go from inspiration to activation. Like that's one thing that's unique about us. Like I don't consider us a media company. I think media is one part of it, but I really consider us an activation company. Like how do we get you from being inspired by, the person right there rock climbing, and, can you go do that? And how do I get you there? And so I think that's the spirit of many of these brands, and that was the linking between them, is like, how do you take them from just inspiring you to then wanting to activate? And that's what the mapping tools are about. That's what the registration platforms are about. So there's just a lot of opportunity in my mind to take somebody from reading something or watching something or listening to something into doing something. And in our view, in our model, once you go do that thing, if you have a good experience and we've given you the right education, the right tools, the right gear, then you're going to come back for more. You're going to do it again, right? Over and over and over. And I think if there's anything from a mission perspective, and we say, the goal is to get everyone outside, which is the goal, but I would say one step further than that is like to get everybody outside over a lifetime, right? It's not just about one experience. It's about how do we keep you involved in the outdoors over and over and over and over again. Right?
That was the hypothesis, and I couldn't feel it more strongly. What are you most proud of now that you've built this out?
Well, we've done 23 acquisitions, and that hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy on the team. It hasn't been easy on some of the companies that were acquired, because we're trying to take like sort of disparate products and put them together from like an architectural perspective, a single, like we only want you to have one login. We don't want you to have to think about 15, 20, 30 logins. We want you to have one membership that kind of gives you access to all that. We want you, we want to be able to, our partners, our brand partners, we want to be able to serve, advertise across the whole platform. If you even go into the back office pieces, like at one time, I think we had 11 or 12 different financial systems. We had, because of the way it all came together, right? Like, I mean, all these
23
people,
acquisitions.
yeah, I mean, they had a lot of different ones. And so, I think that's what I'm probably most proud of right now. And I would say one is the team, because I think we're getting to a spot where the team is working more cross-company than they are in their silos. And I think that was the real challenge when we first acquired the companies, is like, how do you get people to see the bigger picture, and how do they fit into that bigger picture? But we still have a long way to go. I'm very proud of that we've been able to get all of this together. I think we still have a long way to go to reduce the friction on the consumer side. We still have a lot of new product coming out that's like, here in the next, this year and next year, that's going to come out, that people will start to understand the vision more and more as we sort of roll some of these pieces out. But I would just say I'm probably most proud of the team we put together to execute on this. And not all of them that started with us are still here either. I mean, people, things change, right, as you evolve through these processes. I think that the mission, I'm proud of the fact that we got to a mission that has a lot of clarity around it for the team.
Mm-hmm. How many paying subscribers do you guys have outside?
About 850,000.
Wow.
That's just digital. We still have the print magazine, which is sort of separate from that for outside, because we only have one print magazine left, which is outside. But I mean, we've done that all in 5 years.
Congratulations.
Right? Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's gone very fast, but it's been through a lot of, again, very, very hard work that the team has put in.
Yeah, you're pretty good at hiring people, I'd say, at this point.
There's definitely some great people on the team.
Wait, what's the number one thing you hire for? If you just pick one thing.
Yeah, I mean, going back to my story about Helix, about even myself, I would just say I'm a big believer that if the enthusiasm is there, like if you can really see in someone that they're highly engaged in what you are trying to build, they often will pick up the skills that they need along the way. So don't get me wrong, skill matters, and we try to really make sure for the positions that we're hiring for that we're getting the best possible skilled person we can in that role. But for me, I look a lot at enthusiasm. Like, where are they in their journey and around, specifically the outdoors? Like, are they really engaged in what we're doing? I'd say enthusiasm matters at some level over skill.
How much do they care?
Yeah, for sure.
You've raised capital for this as well. You got Sequoia, right?
Yep.
One of the best venture capital firms in the world.
Yep.
I love their story on Acquired, another podcast. So good. Such a legacy.
Yeah.
What have you learned through raising funds, like the good and bad? Are there kind of takeaways that you have at this point that you'd share with people who are now going through it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I was a lot more deliberate. If I look back, MapMy was all venture, and frankly, we had gone through a Series C there because we had a strategic that had invested in MapMy before we got acquired by Under Armour. Casio watches actually out of Japan, which was super interesting, and they did very well on the deal because of how late they had done it before Under Armour had invested. But we were venture then, but there were some things like as a first-time entrepreneur that I did that I might not have done. Like, as an example, Austin Ventures asked us to move the business to Austin, right? And we did. I would never move a company again for a venture capital firm just because they want you in a city. Like, I would just not take the money, right? So I had to learn some of those things along the way. When I was with Helix, we had a pretty big mix of private equity, venture, obviously a big strategic, and Illumina that owned 50% of it. And so I really, as we were, raising capital for outside, have tried to avoid private equity at some level because of the type of model that they have and what it potentially does. And I've tried to look for more evergreen investors. Like, we have Madrone, which is the Walton family. They don't really have the same timelines. Same thing with Sequoia Heritage, which is the fund that we're in. Doesn't really have a specific timeline, like a 7-year horizon. So I've tried to avoid that, and so I certainly have learned that. But I think more importantly, like, you really want to. I feel incredibly fortunate. I mean, we have Michael Moritz on the board, and he's obviously like a legend. But he's also like, he's just incredibly thoughtful in his approach. And I say always, like, I mean, I was on a call with them for this weekend about some things, and just very, very methodical and thoughtful in his approach to helping entrepreneurs to get to their ultimate vision where they're headed. Same thing with John Spinelli at Jazz. Like, they've been absolutely fantastic partners, and even though they're more of a traditional venture fund, they've just been. John has been a rock. I mean, he's been with me for 5 years, and since the seed round, and invested every way along the road, like never pulled back from investing. And I think that's pretty rare. And so I would just say, if you're like, when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, talking to them about raising capital, one is like, I kind of don't ever think about the no's in a negative. I think about like each meeting as an opportunity to learn something about what investors want, and also how it fits the company that you're building, right? Like, it's not just like, it's okay when somebody says no to outside, because you kind of go, okay, well, maybe they have a different focus, and that's actually good, because you don't want them in your business if they don't have a real focus on your category, right? Or the thing that you're trying to build. So I would just say that I've been incredibly fortunate. We have great investors in our deal, and like all companies, though, we've had to get pretty lean and mean the last like 2 years. Like, we've really focused on being EBITDA positive and how to be self-sustaining, because we don't know what the capital raise like market's going to look like over the next 24 months, right? So I would say that we went through a period of hyper growth, where they were basically like, not only go acquire, but also burn money and really make the investments you need to make to move quickly, to now having a business that is growing but is going to be EBITDA positive this year. And I think that's, again, a testament to the team and our ability to sort of pivot to, what I believe will be a better outcome for the company.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any like routines or daily habits that are a must for you?
Yeah, I mean, I try to, like, I think about working out as like paying myself or taking care of myself, like as an important part of every day. It's sometimes I'm not good at resting, and so I burn myself out. And but in general, I would say my routine is usually structured around like, I always drink coffee in the morning. We were saying that earlier, but like doing something for myself that day, and it could be something like today. I did 2 meetings just walking around the neighborhood, walked 2 miles.
That's so nice.
Right?
That's so empowering to see a CEO doing that.
And I just think that you got to try to do that. You have to try to find space, because ultimately, like, you're going to have more energy. You're going to have the ability to give back more if you're in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
So pay yourself first as an entrepreneur is an important sort of thesis for me that definitely fits into my daily routine.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got a festival coming up in June. What's that going to be like?
Well, we've had a big vision around it, and again, the team is just working incredibly hard on it. But it's really over time to become like the South by Southwest for the outdoor industry. This year, it's going to be 2 days with a third day industry day on the Friday before. But again, the idea being is that it's there's music, there's film, there's education. So like talks and series for people to understand the outdoor industry. There's an entire experiential thing, like North Face has a climbing competition going all day Saturday. We have, stuff for kids. There's a dog competition. So it's very much about bringing all those elements of the outdoors together in one spot. That's sort of a cultural moment for the outdoors. All of our brands will have presence there and be able to talk to consumers about what we're doing in each one of the verticals. And hopefully, even for some people, like there's still a lot of people out there that don't yet understand that it's all linked together. the ecosystem that we built. And so this is another opportunity for us to kind of put all that in front of people.
How can people get involved with it?
They just go to festival.outsideonline.com. They can still buy tickets. They can buy general admission or VIP tickets. If you're an Outside Plus member, we're going to have a whole bunch of experiences on site for Outside Plus. And it's in Denver, in Civic Center Park on June 1st and 2nd. And then the Industry Day is called the Summit, and that's on Friday, the day before.
And it's festival.outside.com?
Festival.outsideonline.com.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I've done 32 guests now on Permission to Shine. And really the goal is to find the most inspiring people around the world, you know? And a common theme that I'm learning is a lot of them are very humble, which I love, because then it's like, man, I finally get a chance to like share these humble people's stories who don't always take the time to share it. And so one, thank you, Robin.
Yeah, of course.
Like it really means
My
the world
pleasure.
that you took time to do this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
But what I'm gonna do is take 30 seconds, all right? I'm gonna time this.
Sure.
And you have to brag about yourself. Your most proud accomplishments for 30 seconds, and I can't say a word.
Okay.
It's just you for 30 seconds talking about what you're most proud of accomplishing.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
I am definitely most proud about my relationship with my wife, Sarah. I mean, she really has just been such an anchor for me in terms of like building and thinking about the future and like how we have thought about it together. My kids are amazing. I mean, I try as much as I can, considering how much, sort of other things we have going on, to spend time with my kids, and you can see them light up when you give them that time.
30 seconds, you're done.
That's it. Okay, that's it. That's fine. Those
Wife
are
and
good
kids.
ones.
I mean,
those are good ones.
That says a lot.
You've
sold the company for $150 million, and it still comes down to family.
It still comes down to family for me.
What would your younger self, the younger self that was 12 years old, biking up Lookout Mountain at 2 a.m., what would that kid think about everything you've accomplished and built?
That kid probably be still pretty upset I didn't make it to the Tour de France, but I think that kid would be proud of the fact that I was lucky enough, even in the environment I was raised in, to have a lot of outdoor time, and the fact that it's really come full circle and that I'm trying to build something for people to really explore and have the opportunity to go outdoors. Because for me as a kid, I mean, it was, if you ask me, it was, the difference between hopefully, doing something great in the world and not, like that outdoor space and time and the energy it gave me, to me, I wish everybody had the opportunity to explore. And unfortunately, right now we're at a point in time that like we've never spent more time indoors on screens, and that's scary.
What should I have asked you that I didn't ask?
Maybe what's next for Outside?
Tell me.
I think there's still a lot of people that don't understand what we're building, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to me. It's like, I think criticism is good. There's a lot of people that think we should be doing things differently than maybe we are, or don't understand what the final picture looks like. But we have so many, like, I go back to the team and the creativity and the work that they've put in to build what we're building for the future, which is ultimately, again, all centered around a single goal, which is how do we measure and understand and, push people to spend more time outdoors. And I think when people see the things coming, there will be some people that will be negative on it and say, what does that have to do with writing articles or creating, the next, Warren Miller film? But I think inevitably what it will lead to is more time outdoors across the entire user base, and hopefully a growing user base. And so that for me is the ultimate goal, is like, how do we measure time outdoors for people, and how do we get more people outdoors in general? And I think a lot of people will understand that better in a couple of years.
Amen.
Yeah.
Robin, thank you.
Hey, my pleasure.
It's so inspiring to hear your story. You're such a wealth of knowledge. This is a blast.
Hey,
I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.